Hello, and welcome to the sixth episode of Across the Pond with myself, Jim, and David. And on
Hey.
this, sorry,
Oh, I just said, hey.
hi. Oh, I thought I might got your name wrong.
Oh,
Uh,
no.
anyway, tonight it's going to be sort of a Civil War talk about what's going on in the UK. And before I start explaining the situation, let me state I totally condemn the violence and the riots by any side involved, whether that's the Patriots or the far right, as media smears them as, or the Muslim Defence League, or the Marxist group Hope Not Hate. I condemn all violence without reservation. Right, so I'm going to explain a couple of things that Americans might not easily understand, and it's a big factor. One is our population density is over 8 times greater than the United States of America. So in the last couple of years, we've had net legal immigration of about 750,000. Now, if you want to compare that to America, that would be about equivalent of either 6 billion people coming in a year legally to the United States, or if the same amount of immigration into the United States, but the US 1/8 the size as it is now. So if they're saying there's 10 million illegals come in over the last 4 years, 2.5 years, the problems, the amount of immigration into the UK is far worse measured from the point of population density. You're packing people in an already packed country. Now, there's a couple of consequences to that as well. Firstly, it's going to be harder to find land to build. I mean, in the US, you could build new cities. So this is Labour's government scurrying around to find land. The second problem is because of population density, is everyone's living cheek by jowl. So there's nowhere really to go off and cool off once these riots end. And I think it's going to be a bit like Black Lives Matter in America with the riots over the summer. Because I know there's one tomorrow. There's two this evening I've heard of. There's one tomorrow in Brighton, which is the coast, about 20 miles from me. There's one in Norwich on Saturday, and I hear there's a load more as well. So this could just keep going. Thankfully, no one's died yet, apart from the girls that stabbed. Now, that's the economic situation of it, or geographically, so to speak, population density. The second problem, or how this started, was Keir Starmer's reaction to it. I would say, most people would say, little girls stabbed to death, 11 stabbed, 3 dead, is worse than a few bricks hurled at a mosque, right? Neither right, but one to me is obviously worse. Because Keir Starmer's speech was mainly saying, I'm going to protect the Muslim community, blah, 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 blah. And this, even though it wasn't a Muslim involved, it was probably the final straw for a lot of people, because a lot of suiciding bombings had involved Muslims. So, as well as the grooming gangs, and there appears nothing to be done about it. And a patience of a lot of people have just gone. So that's the political situation. But everything else is similar to Western Europe and the United States, the problems with immigration, etc. And one more thing to add about population density. Britain's the most densely populated country in Europe as well. The second most densely populated is Holland. We had Brexit and we have reform on the march now, and Holland has Wilders, the largest party. So it's following the pattern of population density as much as anything else. There's also problems in Ireland as well, where they've mass immigration. And one of the some of the riots that are going on in Belfast, they've even had the Protestants and the Catholics marching together against immigration. Now that's an unusual sight. And what happens next? I can see that in Ulster that these former paramilitaries could be arming up again, and if it kicks off there, it could then spread south of the border into the Republic of Ireland, and over to the British mainland as well. So the longer this goes on, worse it's going to get. But it's just going to rip, like United States, it's going to rip society apart, and I don't know if it can be put back together.
Mm.
I
Well, it seems to me, I went and checked out, since I had heard about the troubles y'all were having, but I hadn't really heard a lot of details. This morning I went and looked up some videos, and it seems to me that it was an account, social media account. I think it might have been X. Almost immediately after the killings, posted a bunch of false information, like the kid's name, which the
Yeah.
police haven't released because he's a minor, and that he was, a Muslim, and that he was an asylum seeker and all this stuff. He'd been there like less than a year, and it turns out that nobody knows his name because they haven't released it yet. He was born, or at least grew up, there in Britain, and he reportedly has no verifiable links to Islam or anything like that.
Yeah,
But since the police weren't releasing any information about the kid because he's a kid, that let that initial burst of false information just ferment and spread, and it really, people, especially people who were, may have had some presumptions in that direction anyway,
yeah.
were just ready to seize on it and run with it. And I
They,
think that's one of the reasons that the reaction was so sudden and so energetic, because there was only information coming from one place, but it turns out it wasn't the correct information.
yeah, they as sometimes happened, because the government etc was slow to release information, that vacuum got filled with a load of BS. So yeah, I mean, I saw it as well on there, and I thought, hang on a minute, you know, I'm not going to jump to conclusions. Then when I got some reliable information that this guy was from, or kid was from Rwanda, I went on to search, looked at the religion of Rwanda, and it's probably 99% variations of Christian. So I thought, well, yeah, there's a lot of bull here. So held fire on that. But as I said, there's a lot of issues conflated in there. Like an army officer was stabbed by an immigrant the week before, and we've had various other problems. And we voted 4 or 5 times for lower immigration, and so democracy has failed. And when democracy fails, violence does become an option for some people, especially if they're on the sharp end of it. So yeah, I mean, this is establishment failure, I would say, overall, because there's also instincts. Parents are going to be automatically think of their children when they hear of schools stabbed to death like that. And the second issue is the first job of government is to protect its citizens from harm. And there's a growing awareness that our government cares more about immigrants than the native population, and has been putting us in danger. So,
Well, when random mosques start getting attacked, I mean,
yeah,
they are protecting their citizens at that point. The people in those mosques are citizens, I presume, at least for the most part. So they didn't actually have anything to do with it. So the police are actually protecting, the citizens or the occupants or whatever you want to call them.
Well, this is it. Up until about 2000, Britain was at over 90% native white, and this is just happening in 20 years. We've got estimated 2 million to 5 million illegal immigrants in the UK, as well as people come here who haven't got citizenship or yet. So when people say the mosque, I read a story about one mosque that's been in Britain 80 years. It was, and they were simulated in a small one. I think it was up in Newcastle, and I read an article about that and how the citizens there, they went to fight in World War II, etc. No problem. Uh, but we also have the situation now where more Muslims in Britain, and the one with citizens, went to fight for ISIS than fought in the British, than joined the British Army. So you've got all these compounding problems as well. And then you look at the globe, every religion in the world seems to be at war with Islam, or vice versa, which would be more accurate. So yeah, I mean, they talk about Islamophobia, but it isn't an irrational fear. There are things going on. So my view is I don't want to sit here criticizing Islam or Christianity. I'm more worried what happens next. What happens next is it could. People have been saying that Keir Starmer has declared war on the British white working class. Now, whether you believe that or not, a lot of people do believe that. And one of the things that I think will merge from this is an Anglo or white identity. Now, the correct response to that is to say, yeah, okay, let's keep it low key, and let's even out the laws. So the Equality Act, which favours certain groups, get rid of that. So you treat all groups the same, equal as individuals on the law, white identity, low key. But the danger is those on the left will say, this is white supremacy, and they'll start weaponizing people against the Anglo community, and things could go boom. That's one of my big worries. Another one is that if we start getting if we start getting large numbers of fatalities, it could then begin to spiral. The Prime Minister, two-tier policing, Keir Starmer, as they're calling him now, he's holding a Cobra meeting this evening, which is the emergency cabinet thing for acts of terrorism, etc. And I don't know, they're saying he might ban X. I don't know if it was for Elon insulting him online or something. But I don't know how many British businesses are dependent on X or use X and what sort of damage that will do. So events are moving fairly fast and dangerously at the moment. Now, obviously, you've got to say there's good Muslims, bad Muslims, there's good English, there's bad English. But how many bad ones before you face catastrophic events? That's a question that's never asked or answered, and that needs to be asked and answered as well. I think that the possibility of the military being on the streets before the end of the summer, say late September, is quite high as well. I'm not sure what Keir Starmer was talking about when he said he's going to have a standing army of officers. Is he talking about a military unit to deploy, or is he talking about a personal army of police officers to deploy? Which, in other words, just saying, let's get more coppers, give them a special unit, and send them out to where the protests are. I don't know.
As I understand it, at least initially, and in some places, the police were vastly outnumbered by the protesters. So that he may have been referring to simply having, like you said, more police there who can, actually form a line and stand against protesters instead of simply being overwhelmed with numbers.
Yeah, this is where the accusations of two-tier policing sort of hold weight, because one place where they're overwhelmed was in Birmingham, which is about, I think, 25-30% Muslim. And so they were all out on the streets because they were heard that the English Defence League were having a protest there. Now, the English Defence League was disbanded about 12, 14 years ago. So this is a bit of fake information going around. There was other fake information about Muslim women having acid thrown in their faces. That wasn't true. So that's getting the Muslim community or members of it riled up as well. And there was definitely, looking from Birmingham, where they were going around, Muslims were going around attacking English people randomly. A serious lack of police anywhere.
Well, that was going both ways. So I've seen
Yeah,
videos of people, who have a little more melanin in their skin walking down the street and just getting randomly punched because they got too close to some guy who
yeah,
who doesn't like those kind of people.
I,
So
I, I
that's
agree. It's definitely two ways. I mean, when we say lack of police, it looked like in Rotherham there was a lack of police as well when they went to go and set fire to a hotel that's hosting immigrants. So
and it doesn't help. You got people like Tommy Robinson out there stoking all this anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim stuff. You've got people in Parliament uh, basically, doing the same thing.
uh,
It's no wonder people feel like they're under attack or being threatened. You've got people in government out there, basically saying the same things that these protesters are out there shouting at them as they're trying to attack their mosques and whatnot.
yeah, I agree to an extent, but as I said before, they're probably using Tommy Robinson as a regular to go to scapegoat. I did see on X inflammatory comments, a lot of them coming from. He's got a small political party, and he used to be an actor, or he's done some acting. Lawrence Fox. Now, I saw some quite inflammatory comments from him. I don't know if they're planning on arresting him, but uh, the show I was watching earlier, Lotus Eaters, which is right of centre, you could say pro reform party, they were condemning all violence. They were telling people, don't go to these demonstrations, nothing good will happen. And that's what I will add, just don't go to these demonstrations. But a lot of people are angry. I mean, it's okay here sitting here preaching and that, but I've got to go to a hotspot next week, so that could be a bit spicy. So, it's okay pontificating, but I can remember I got a parcel from someone in the US during the Black Lives Matter riots, and she said that it would be late arriving because they're having um, problems with rioting with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and she lived in Seattle, and I got the parcel, and it had a return address on it. So I sort of looked up the address out of curiosity, and I saw her house in the road, and the other side of the road had probably all been shops and businesses, all that had been burnt down. I think it's College Road or College Lane in Seattle. So I thought, yeah, I could see what sort of problems she's had. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and something that's slipping under the radar while all this is going, while we're talking civil war, is what's going on in Bangladesh. They've overthrown the government. They've installed an Islamicist, and I see pictures that they're going around murdering Hindus. Now, how Modi and India react to that over the next few days, I don't know, but that could go up in flames as well. And of
Yeah,
course,
I
we've got.
only heard a very little about that. Just the headline that the government had been overthrown. I haven't really gotten a chance to get any details about that at all.
Well, I saw bodies strung up from bridges and being beaten and tied to the side of vehicles and that. And saying it was Hindus, the Hindu population in Bangladesh. So there's that worry at the moment. But obviously, what going on in Britain, there's virtually nothing on the mainstream media about that. There's very little what's going on in Israel and Lebanon, and that could go hot any moment soon. Well, it
Oh,
is,
it
but
will. Yeah, it
yeah.
definitely will. Yeah,
And
Iran hasn't struck back yet, but they're going to.
And the follow on from that is that there's quite a lot of Iranians in Britain as well, and how they react, and if we get pulled into the war as well. So it's we're building up lots of negatives and not enough positives. So Britain is moving in a very dangerous direction, sadly to say.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know
Yeah.
where the
Now, I don't know. How stories from, say, the USA get disseminated over there, but it turns out a lot of times in these protests that go bad, like some of the Black Lives Matter protests and things like that, or riots, whatever you want to call them. We have a genuine and ongoing issue here with agents provocateur, people who are not necessarily with these organizations or groups, um, you know, either doing things to make those groups look bad, or just people who only show up not because they believe in anything, they just want to set shit on fire.
yeah,
And so that happens. You can't take pockets of misbehavior, of violence, of uh, damaging property and things. You can't take these isolated pockets of things and then you paint the whole group with that brush, because it just that doesn't do anything for coming to some kind of a reconciliation.
yeah.
So though you might want to keep that in mind. We do have a lot of that going on. I mean, and it happens on all sides of the political spectrum. Um, January 6th,
Yeah.
there were probably half of that crowd that was outside the Capitol that day were probably feds or Fed adjacent. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
I've
not
heard
just
there
the
were
left; it's
30.
the left and the right. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
If they haven't actually infiltrated an organization, they've got people who will show up and claim affiliation, but they're just there to start shit.
Riots,
So
you mean?
yeah, very good example. So
Yeah. It
that's the kind of things we're contending with in the USA. Is you can't even trust that the rioters are who they say they are. I mean, it is a great big mess.
I'll go further. There was a far right American group called Vanguard that got made over and called itself the United Front or something. They turn up with grey trousers, shields, and that march about. There's about 40 or 50 of them. Apparently,
Mm,
they're just obsessed of being infiltrated by feds. And when they turn up in the back of lorries, which is illegal, they cover the number plates of them, which is also legal. And people have been saying, well, if the feds haven't infiltrated them fully, they'd probably arrest them. But the reason they let them go and demonstrate is because they're full of feds and they're acting as a honeypot to draw more people in. And
mm,
there was an article the other day in Zero Hedge saying that this actual operation, which was when Robert Mueller was in charge of the FBI, uh, actually causes more people to join the far right than actually arrest people who are actually members of it. So, yeah, I'm with everything you say. It's a mess. They shouldn't be doing that to left or right. But I see what
yeah,
you
and
mean.
even sometimes when they do like intercede and arrest somebody, uh, if you see the pictures and everybody's sitting around in handcuffs, but they've still got their masks on, there's something a little off there
Yeah,
because the cops are not going to arrest somebody and never look at their face. That just does not happen
yeah,
unless they already know who they are.
yeah. I mean, COVID, that's probably one of the first things they do.
No,
Um,
this wasn't that kind of mask. These are like bandanas around the face kind of masks.
yeah,
Uh,
but then if they unmask them, and there's the other side present who could then dox them, that could probably cause problems for the police. I don't know because I don't know.
I don't know that the cops actually care about anything like that. I mean,
Yeah,
they have no problem with taking the mask off of other protesters or people who have been arrested, taken into custody. Um, it,
yeah,
I don't um, I don't see how that is even in police procedures. I mean, the very first thing you do, uh, preferably before you take somebody into custody, is you identify them so you know who you're dealing with. So to leave those masks on like that, um, they are being protected, whether it's intentionally or whatever. They are being protected.
yeah. We have a couple of laws in the UK which are interesting, which shows how soft the police are. There's a 1990 Football Offences Act, which states that if you're wearing a mask on a football match day within 2 miles of a football ground, which most of these protests probably are, you can automatically be arrested because obviously they're doing it to hide their identities, and the police cameras are everywhere to identify wrong uns. And the other law in the UK we have is political uniforms are illegal. So this comes from the 1930s and Oswald Mosley's black shirts, who they didn't want marching around. But obviously, since then we've had Black Lives Matter dressing up in black uniforms. We've had these.
Well, that's not really a uniform, and that is also used by other groups of protesters. It's called black bloc.
Yeah,
It's just a mode of dress to make to make it harder to identify you. If all they get is a picture or they get a like a screenshot of you on CCTV or something, if you're in head to toe in black and so is everybody else, and you've got the bandana or whatever over your face, it makes it harder to identify you, and they do that on purpose. It's not necessarily a uniform of any specific group. It's just a mode of dress for protesters who want to avoid being remotely identified.
yeah. British laws are a bit loose, like the Public Order Act. A lot of it's open to interpretation. So if you've got 20 guys in there dressed in black with masks, all carrying skateboards, plausible deniability, that it's a weapon, then police could probably act on that rather than just two or three dressed in black and say, well, we're goths or off to a concert or something. So the police and a lot of laws are loose that gives them some leeway. That's why they've been going round arresting people for accusing of inflaming the rioters. Um, I've seen some stuff which could be called inflammatory on both sides, but I've also seen some stuff that is benefit of the doubt, possibly not inflammatory, but it's a question to see if they are arrested as well, how heavy-handed Keir Starmer is. Because what I've heard, he's quite authoritarian. Because when he took over the Labour Party, he drove out the Trotskyite previous leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and all his acolytes. So he can. I think his instincts are authoritarian. That's another problem because that will rub people up the wrong way in this country. So,
Mm. Speaking of videos, though, I did see a funny one. I mean, not funny as in humorous, just funny as in instant karma. There was a guy in a gray sweatsuit
oh yeah,
at one of it might have been the first big riot there, and he was jumping around, hooping and hollering. Looked like he was celebrating, which is kind of a weird thing to do when three kids had just been killed. If you're there to protest or whatever, that's one thing. But that still seems to me it would be a solemn occasion. But he's jumping around and yelling, and looks like he's having a grand old time. And not long after that, the idiot gets between the rioters and the police and is walking toward the police when he gets hit in the front of the head with a brick that ricocheted off of the police shields. At almost the same time, he gets hit in the back of the head with another half brick that was coming from the other direction. So he turns around and he starts to stagger away from the police. And then a big old brick comes and smacks him right between the legs.
I saw a bit of that.
I know
Yeah,
that's not literally funny. I mean, I know that that's got to be rough. But
yeah.
but the juxtaposition of him like celebrating at this protest of three kids getting killed and then getting smacked in the head and having his balls literally busted, just
Yeah,
it makes you think. Maybe things do happen for a reason sometimes.
yeah, I could see why. Yeah, I could see why that's funny, and yeah, I did see that. But there's been so many clips of violence on Twitter, for example, that I just come away and I'm feeling, oh god, when is this going to
Mm.
end? And not anytime soon, by the looks of it.
Yeah.
And it's hot and humid. That doesn't help. That rolls people up, and it
Oh yeah.
rolls. So, but humidity is going to drop over the next few days, so that's a good thing. Anyway,
Yeah, we're getting ready to see a pretty big increase in humidity. We haven't started feeling the remnants of was it Betty or
I think
what Debbie? I think
that's it.
the name of that hurricane. Um, we haven't really started getting any of the outer bands or anything. I don't even know if what reaches us will be tropical storm type weather, but I expect we will eventually get a bit of rain, but it hasn't gotten here yet. I think
Yeah.
it's still chewing on the Carolinas at the moment.
Shall we finish it here? I think we've run out of juice on this, but it's quite interesting.
Yeah, could do, could do.